Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Roadmap. I'm your host Rach, and today I am super excited to welcome another external guest onto the show. So welcome Julia. So Julia is a senior product manager at Intercom, and today's episode is going to be slightly different. What I wanted to do is put a bit of a spin on some of the usual content we've recently been sharing around techniques, areas of product and tech, and best practices. And on this week's episode, what I wanted to do was actually focus on the story of a product, how an idea is formed, the roles involved in bringing that product to life, and some real life lessons. So Julia is joining us today, and she's going to be giving us her story in the rollout of Finn, which is a generative AI chatbot that was introduced by Intercom very recently. And she's going to be telling us her product story about how she managed to bring this to life and launch it. But before we get into that, Julia, would you mind just introducing yourself to the listeners at home, just telling us a bit about yourself, your role at Intercom, and how you got into product management?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Rachel. It's lovely to talk to you today. Well, I think we spoke about this before, but my journey into product was a bit squiggly, as we talk about. I actually come from a museum and research background, so don't come from traditional tech background. So I actually started working in tech around 2016 when I lived in Germany, and actually I had gone to do my master's. And because I didn't speak much German, I didn't have many options for work. So I had a couple of friends that worked in a car sharing startup in Munich. And really the CEO took a bet on my transferable skills and said, you should be good enough to do the role of a product manager. So I really had to learn from the ground up, like what it meant to be a product manager, how you do the role. So it was a really interesting journey. Fell in love with product. And I think, that's sort of how I started. I actually really fell in love with the idea of the ways of working. They were much more transparent, more collaborative, very different to what I'd experienced working in museums. So I decided I wanted to go back to London and retrain as an agile coach. So I worked for a couple of years in the healthcare industry as an agile coach, and ultimately decided I wanted to be a little bit more hands-on with building the product rather than building the team. And sort of that's how I got into product.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well that you mentioned that you come from a museum and history background, because that is a very similar route for me, like a former history student. And I definitely think it's like that curiosity mindset that you have that definitely leads you into, I think a lot of product managers that I've talked to before, like it's been that curiosity, that story, the reasons behind things. So I think it's really interesting that you've come from a similar background as well. And yeah, definitely squiggly lines. Brilliant. So today we are talking about Finn, and I guess let's just take it back to the start. So for those of us who might be listening at home, who might be brand new to this product, obviously I've just used the word AI here. Could you tell us what Finn is? Particularly, what is that idea of generative AI? How does it work?
Yeah, perfect. Oh, well, you did a good enough job in explaining what it is, but Finn is a generative AI chatbot. So the idea is that it will, Intercom, let me just take a step back, is a customer service platform. So Finn helps customers answer questions automatically. So with little to no training, you pop your help center content, for example, into Finn's engine, and it will help answer questions automatically. So slightly different to previous models of chatbots that we had before. We had one called Resolution Bot, which required more training. So you had to train the engine to then answer the questions on your behalf. But with Finn, it's different. You plug in the content and it generates the answer based on what the end user is asking. So the broad idea of Finn is to help reduce the volume of support queries that reach support reps, basically. So that's like the general idea of Finn. And it's different to previous iterations of chatbots in the sense that it's more conversational. It also has more safeguards around it as well. So it won't answer random questions from the internet. It will just answer questions based on your help center knowledge, which is really important for customer service because you want to give the right answers and you don't want the bot to hallucinate, which is something that we saw with previous technology. So that's sort of like the idea of Fin is to, to help customers reduce the amount of work that the support reps need to put in. And Fin is this chatbot. It's multilingual. It can work on different channels. We've been working on making it more robust as we go along. So it's been really interesting to see the evolution of Fin. So we can talk a little bit more about that as well. But I think what really makes it stand out is that it's part of, a fully fledged platform, right? So it's, we're providing a seamless like end-to-end experience. So all the way from the end user first reaching out to someone over the messenger, all the way to the end if it needs to hand over to support rep, for example, or just all that, Intercom gives you that, all those touch points for that journey. So that's what Fin is in a nutshell.
How did you come up with the name Fin?
There's a whole nother podcast on that you can listen to. It wasn't me. It was I think it was the marketing team wanted to think about something that was short, snappy, that had a personality. There was different incarnations of like the name that came about, but it was important to give it that sense of personality. And I think that was like the whole story around it. I think they had some different ideas from, I think, like Kai to Liam to all sorts of things. They had some sort of like principles around what it was, wanted it to be gender neutral, short, snappy, recognizable. But that's definitely a story for another podcast. It's very,
Amazing. So I guess if we take it back to the beginning stages of this product coming to life, how did this idea come around? So it feels like there was a big step from chatbots and functionalities that already exist. How did you go from that to the idea of, okay, we want to create something like Fin?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, we had a previous iteration of, machine learning chatbot called Resolution Bot. Sort of the engine that powered Resolution Bot required training, as I mentioned, and that can be quite cumbersome for customers, right? There's a lot of training involved, needing to create your content. There's a whole, apparatus around that you need to sort of get involved in. So I think it's difficult to adopt something like that. But then there's a balance with the technology, right? I think towards the end of last year, when OpenAI launched GPT 3.5, we started thinking about it. And the machine learning team that's led by Fergal Reid started to explore whether or not we could make something out of it. Can we make it easier to create these chatbots? And they did a sort of proof of concept, and it was like, it's not there yet. The technology isn't there yet. It's not ready. It's not conversational enough, or it hallucinates more than it should for like what we're trying to achieve. So it just wasn't there yet. And then I think towards the beginning of this year, we got access to OpenAI's GPT-4 beta that had come out, and the team again started to explore whether or not it could work. And that's sort of when they said, I actually think that this could be something. It's conversational, it takes prompts well, it takes instructions well. So I think we could actually do something here. And I think that was like the, flip of a switch. That's sort of when we all just jumped on it. So that's when we started working on it. So when we said, okay, like we know what the need is, like the problems that customers currently have, how we can help solve that. When the technology was there and it was the right time, that's sort of when we said, okay, now let's work on it. And that's when I got involved, when we were ready to start validating the solution and putting it in front of customers.
And who was involved in that? So how did you start to put people together to kick this work off? What did that look like?
It was definitely a product built by many hands. It was a truly cross-functional experience. You had people in R&D, you had people in marketing, in sales, customer advocacy. There were people from all over the company like invested in Fin and working on Fin. So, I was working on it from a product perspective, but we had people working on it from a pricing and packaging perspective, marketing, GTM. It was a whole thing in the company. It was really nice to see actually, because I hadn't worked on something to that scale of investment before, where it felt like everyone was working on the same thing and we were all rowing in the same direction. So I think that was pretty cool, just to see how something can move at scale and at pace when you put that investment into it. So that's sort of like how it started, I'd say.
And what was that like to work with so many people? Like all at once, everyone just kind of like swarmed together. How did you find that initially?
Yeah, I think it had its ups and downs, because I think, you're working at scale.
Yeah.
There's so many different teams working on the same thing. I think there's challenges within that already.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're, on the same page, that you're working together, you're working towards the same goal. But it really helped that we sort of had broken down this work into different milestones. So the first one was around the beta and like really validating what the solution would look like. So that's sort of like where it all started off. And, my team was involved in that. We had some other teams around it as well. We had all the enablement around us and, leadership support to start validating what that solution looked like. So that beta was just really gathering the customer testimonials, the hard data, understanding like what worked, what didn't work for customers. And then once we were ready to scale a bit further with the beta, that's when we said, okay, now we need more support. And that's, for example, when the sales team got involved, and they really helped with bringing sort of the beta to life and scale. So that's when, we had more people join the beta. So initially we had around 10 people. It was a very manual process, and then all of a sudden it kicked into hundreds, and then even more than that. So that's sort of when it started gaining traction, and more and more people got involved. So that was sort of like the beta phase. And then when we were ready, we got to what we called the early access.
Yeah.
So we had the customers off the waiting list. So initially when we made the announcement, I think it was around March the 14th, we had, I think, around 6,000 people on the wait list in the first week. So it was good signal for, market demand.
Yeah.
And we started just gradually onboarding these people from the wait list. And as more and more people got involved, that's when we started. More people got involved within Intercom as well.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting process.
I guess, did you have any challenges? I feel like, no product launch ever goes perfectly. Did you have any challenges? How did you kind of overcome those?
I think personally, it definitely was challenging having so many teams working on the same thing. I think, we're generally quite contained in like the product squad that we work in, for example, where, we're taking ownership over a problem, we're solving that together as a team. Whereas here we had many, many more teams working on something. So that was a challenge in itself to make sure that we're, on the same page, aligned, moving together in the same direction. I think that was like the main challenge that I felt. Of course, I hadn't experienced something like that in that scale, so I think that was definitely something that was challenging. But also, I'm not sure if you're aware, Intercom have R&D principles, principles that govern how we do product, how we build software, and we usually would, we say we start with a problem, we take time really thinking about what the problem space is, like what the problem is, being able to articulate that, why we should solve it, who we're solving it for. Yeah. We normally take quite a long time like thinking about that to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Whereas here, what we were trying to optimize for was speed to market. So we didn't have that time. So what we really needed to do is make sure that we're balancing like the pace of execution and the pace of getting Fin out to the market, but still keeping, our foundational principles alive. And I think we did that well. I think everyone that works at Intercom embodies those principles in one way or another, and make sure that they're, lived in, day-to-day practice. But that was still a challenge because it was something that was quite different to how we were operating before. And I think another challenge as well was the fact that it was the first of its kind in the market. There wasn't really a blueprint of what it should look like, right? Of course, we had like learnings from the resolution bot and the previous chatbot that we had. But this new technology, GPT-4, for example, was so novel, it hadn't, people hadn't even used it before. Yeah. So there was not only the challenge of trying to understand like what the shape of the solution should look like, but it was also trying to understand our customers' perceptions towards kind of technology like that, and how they could trust it, what would make them trust it, what would make them want to use it. So I think there was like trying to balance those different levels was quite challenging, but it was a fun challenge.
It definitely sounds like a different kind of challenge as well, and especially because you mentioned it is at scale, and it sounds like it was really important, that speed to market. I think as well, like if you don't have the blueprint for something and you are like the new kind of emerging product in that particular industry, I think it does give you quite a lot of flexibility. And I think it was the temptation that, you could risk yourself kind of going into a more visionary, the world is our oyster. Was the temptation there to be perhaps a little bit too creative, like for scope creep to come into that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the principles is around thinking big, but start small. We talk about the cupcake. So like, what is the smallest thing that we could do to validate our assumption or learn what we need to learn, rather than sort of jumping to the wedding cake already. So I know this is, quite a simple, concept in product, but we really take that to hand. So I think the idea of like, what is the cupcake? What is that one, that small iteration of the thing that we need to aim for to make sure that we're on the right track, that we're learning what we need to learn, that we can validate what we need to validate. So it was really helpful at every checkpoint. So for example, the beta or the early access or the general release, to have the goals that underpin each of these. Like, this is what we want to learn, and be very strict with that. Because as I said, we were optimizing for speed to market. We didn't have time to do all the bells and whistles. So we really needed to hone into like, what is it that we're trying to do for our customers? Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And what is that, the basic thing that can do that for them? We have time later for the bells and whistles if we think that that's what's needed. But what is the, the essential thing that we need to get out there? I think that's the main thing that we really had to think about when we were doing this.
Yeah. Excellent. So I guess with the benefit of hindsight, you've taken this product out to market, to scale now. I guess there's always lessons to be learned. And I know you mentioned to me, when we started planning this episode out, there was a lot of things that you learned from that process. Shall we kind of go through some of these lessons that you had? So the first lesson, I know it was all around like kind of like the North Star. Can you kind of go into a bit of detail around that?
Yeah, of course. I think we've alluded to this already, but I think what really helped, and I mentioned this I think at the beginning, was the sense that we were all rowing in the same direction. I think I'd never felt that so strongly before. There was a real sense of energy, of movement, of everyone going in the same direction. And so when I think back and trying to understand, what made us, be that or, embody that, I think it came down to the fact that we had already aligned on what our North Star for this process would be. So it's not necessarily like what are the principles that will govern the product that we create, it's the principles that govern how we will build this product. And for us, aligning from the beginning that we are optimizing for speed to market was key. Like, we wanted to be able to optimize for speed to market because we knew we had a short window to capitalize on this new technology and put ourselves out there and deliver something in order for us to become the leader in AI for customer support. So that really gave us the push to say, we need to be focused. We need to be able to make the decisions that enable us to move at speed. And I think that's really important and relevant for any team, any product manager, anyone really. When you kick something off, you can think, what is that one thing that we want to optimize for? And essentially it's a trade-off, right? Because we optimize for speed, but there are other trade-offs, right? It's one thing over another, and you need to be like clear on that. And that's a good conversation to have with your team when you first start, right? It's giving them the context. I think we talked about this before, where you're giving your team the context so that they can make those decisions on their day-to-day, thinking about that thing that you're optimizing for. We make hundreds of decisions a day, and if we've got that shared understanding of like what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to achieve it, that makes it easier for anyone to make decisions and trade-offs.
I think it's really important that you've mentioned from the start, getting that alignment and getting everyone together to have that conversation. And I think it sounds like the key to this as well was bringing people in early on, because of the amount of people that were involved in it. That's helped you to kind of have a smoother process happening.
100%. I think it definitely helped. Like, it, not here to sugarcoat it. It was a very intense period. I think everyone felt it. What is AI going to do to anything, to our job, to the industry? It was a very it was a step change, right? So it was very exciting though. But yeah, definitely, it definitely helped us like move at speed, but keeping everything else at bay, just sort of trying to clear the noise around us as well, because it's quite easy, as we talked about, to fall in the temptation of doing the bells and whistles.
So I mentioned sharing things early on, bringing people in the process early on in the process. yeah, so this kind of leads on to the second learning area that you've mentioned, which is all about, sharing insights early and often. And I think that's a really important part as well, because I think sometimes it's quite easy as a product manager because you've got so many different things to do in your day-to-day job, that often factor is quite key sometimes when you want to bring people on a journey. So would you mind kind of going into and delving into that area?
Yeah, I think this is one that I found the most exciting, I'd say maybe. I think something for us, because this was a 0 to 1 product, we didn't have, the insights from this new technology, how customers would react to it, what they were thinking about it, how they wanted to use it. It was really important to share the insights from customer calls, from the data that we were seeing early, and to everyone. So what we did was we created a Slack channel, but I guess you could do this on anywhere, in any way that you share information. But we created the Slack channel where anyone could join, and we would share insights from customer calls that we did. So we would share insights or video snippets, anything that could serve as inspiration or insight for anyone. So it was just about creating that sort of shared pool of understanding from the people working on my team all the way to the CEO. We're highly involved in this channel, asking questions, learning from the data. So it was really important that we shared both the qualitative, so, the notes that I took from customer calls, like, this is what we learned, this is the kind of customer that we talked to, this is how they're using Fin. So it was very important to share that, but also shared the, the qualitative data. So we could actually get a good sense of like how people are using it, what are the, the impact that it's causing. So I think that was really helpful right from the beginning to create that shared understanding of like, this is where our customer is at, this is what they're thinking, this is what they're feeling, this is what they're doing. So it was really important, and it's something that we continue using to today. Today it's evolved into a little bit more. So now instead of sharing the beginnings of Fin and how people are feeling, it's like, okay, this is how people are using it, or the sales team will talk about the things that customers would love to see. So it's sort of like evolved into like an even bigger thing now, but I think that was really critical at the beginning to make sure that we all shared the same knowledge, because it's not scalable to have everyone on the same call, but instead you could share the notes or the video recording. So that was really important.
I bet it incentivizes people as well. I think if there's a very open and approachable way, such as a Slack channel or maybe another method like that, I think it does encourage people to think, actually, there's, I see people's reactions in this channel, I see how respondent they are, I've got feedback that I've seen, I'm going to put it in this channel. And I think it really opens up a lot of doors. We do something similar here where we're always building new features. We work a lot with our retailer support team, who are often, I guess, in a similar capacity. They're working with retailers, like dealerships. And I think, it's so useful just to look at these Slack channels as a product manager, and you're getting this real life example of, okay, this is how a customer's felt. This is their personal experience. And you start to kind of like,
Dots,
there's a lot of what's it called, common denominators involved, and it really helps you sometimes to come to a decision where it's like, okay, this seems to be a prevalent theme, this seems to be happening a lot, this customer said this, and maybe actually we've got that opportunity to reach out to them because it's at that such a small scale. So I think Slack definitely helps as well. What were the sorts of insights that you got? Were there any kind of main findings?
Any juicy ones? I think it was just about that. So right at the beginning of Fin, it was about how they are thinking about using Fin. So what are their goals? Why do they want to use it? Is it because, the CEO said that they need to use AI, for example? Yeah. Or is it because they really feel a need to reduce the amount of, queries going into the support agents because they've gone through layoffs? So it could be like a diverse reasons why they want to use Fin. Then when we started shaping the solution and putting something in front of them, we did the beta that I mentioned. Then it's insights around like how they're using the product, what is it that they're struggling with, like do they understand how you can create the bot or set the bot live, or do they understand like how you add content to Fin? So like usability insights, and then as then we launched in general access in June. After that, it could be insights around like the sales team. So like what is really resonating when it comes to selling Fin, for example, or what are the sticking points? And then it becomes, as you say, really helpful for understanding like what else do they need? You know, after this cupcake that we've done, what are the themes that are coming through? So that's sort of one of the, you know, a lot of the things that we actually did as follow-ups from Fin came from that channel. So, you know, adding more content sources, for example, or making Fin multilingual, or better, you know, more robust reporting for Fin. All of that comes from that shared pool of knowledge that we have. And it just makes it easier as well to manage. You've got just like one Slack channel that you can read to know everything that you need to know about Fin and what our customers are saying. It just makes it easier to manage as well. So that was really good.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And I guess the third point, so another lesson that we chatted about recently, is all about product management. So how product managers need to be comfortable with the ambiguity. Like what was that process like for you? I guess that because it's such a new product, like how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's it, right? I my reflection on this is because product managers need to be comfortable with the ambiguity, the uncertainty that is product in general. It's not just working on completely novel technology. Product management will always be messy, and I think that's the thing that we need to accept and be comfortable and learn how to navigate. I think of course working on a novel technology like, you know, generative AI or these different, you know, models is very wavy. It's the idea that you can have the rug pulled out from under you at any point, and that's okay. It's learning how to sort of adapt to that. That's the important thing. I think what the VP of product at Intercom, Brian, said something to me the other day that really stuck. He said, stability isn't an asset. And he said, if things don't feel wavy, they're not right in this kind of environment. We need to thrive and capitalize on like this uncertainty, right? And we need to learn how to move at pace and do the right thing. So I think it's like, you know, making these calculated, you know, steps forward. I think good PMs are ones that can thrive in that kind of environment, but can really understand how to navigate that. It will always be, as I say, messy, but it's knowing and, you know, using the right tools to navigate that at any point in time. So, you know, for example, we've got this, you know, this new thing that we want to launch, or this new product that we're trying, you know, to develop. There are several risks, right? But which one's the riskiest one? How can you mitigate that? Is that by running a beta, like we mentioned? Is it by maybe talking to another product manager that did something similar? Do they have lessons learned? So just thinking about mitigating that, for example. There's all different kinds of tools that you can do. We talked about the cupcake, for example. The smallest thing, get that out there, learn. You know, it's just about finding the right tools to like navigate that uncertainty. But a lot of people, I guess, feel comfortable with the, you know, having more stability and more certainty. But I think in product in general, it's messy. We already work in such a volatile environment anyway. So it's just about leaning into that chaos. It's something that we need to just like move on from and accept and just go with the flow, really. That's what I told myself so many times, just go with the flow.
Like lean in, literally.
Just dive in.
I think that's so important. I think something that makes me really happy about the fact that I love working in this industry is that it's not a typical 9 to 5. You could walk into work one day and there'll be a new idea, a new piece of feedback, something, a new problem to solve. And I like the fact that it's not repetitive. And I love that, where it's like, if it's not wavy, then
something's wrong. I love that. And I think we talked about this, like no 2 days are the same. And we talk about product management and product in general being, you know, from the complex domain. You know, there's never one right way of solving a problem, right? You experiment, you sense, you respond to that. But you can pivot, or you can try something different, or you can add to something that you're doing. I think that's what makes it so exciting. And I think, you know, coming from an arts background, that whole creativity of being able to resolve problems in different ways is really exciting for me. And I think that really, makes me wake up in the morning excited. So, I think that's something cool about product.
I feel the same as well.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, a lot of people get, like, Sunday scaries, and I never feel like that.
I love Mondays.
I'm like, oh, right, what am I doing today?
Yeah. I mean, every day's a Monday in that case, right? Because no 2 days are the same.
That is true. Every day's a day. Cool. So just kind of getting back to Finn, I guess AI in general. So I'd love to kind of hear your opinion on this, because it gets used quite a lot. Like, I'd say the majority of people that I know, everyone's using ChatGPT in some form or capacity. You hear things like chatbots quite a lot, and you're seeing it more and more these days on websites, tools that you use. I know we were just having a discussion earlier about the fact that, like, you can do AI now for your face on an app to get some professional headshots if you really wanted to do that. There's so many possibilities and use cases. And I guess in general in the industry, it'd be good to get your view on where you see AI heading, but particularly what's your opinion on the future, or what's your take? What do you see for Finn in the future, and how does it fit into that perception that you think you might have for the future, your opinion of AI? Or where do you see things heading?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned for Finn, like, we only just begun, right? It was like that initial iteration, like the general release cupcake that we talked about. Yeah. But then as soon as we got it out to market, then we started to think about it from a product market fit lens. Yeah. So PMF isn't just for, like, completely new products. It can also be for more mature products or mature companies, I think it's something that's more cyclical and dynamic. So as soon as we launched Finn, we were then thinking about, right, what do we need to do to make this adoptable? So what are the things that we need to address? So as I mentioned before, it's like, do we want to, well, definitely wanted to, but we give customers more options for content to ingest, for example. So not only being able to ingest the content from your help center, but what about private help centers, or what about URLs, what about files, what about previous conversation history? So just thinking about that in terms of, like, one area of improvement that we made. Another one was working on multilingual. So at the start, Finn only spoke in English. Then we said, okay, but we've got customers all over the world. How can we make Finn speak in more languages? So we sort of use this as like a list of, or we call this like a PMF list. So, like, the things that we want to tick off in order for Finn to be adoptable. So that's where we're sort of still working through that lens. So, like, what are the things that we need to think about in terms of Finn to make this the best product for our customers. So we're still going through that. It's still very new. As I said, we launched Finn in June, on June the 13th. So we've still just continued working on it from that perspective. So that's sort of the future of Finn. But, we talk about Finn as, resolving these more common, frequent questions. But what if Finn could do more, right? Yeah. What if Finn could do much more than just, like, do simple, like, answer question format? It could take actions. So it's just, like, thinking about, like, what else can Finn do? And just in terms of customer service in general, I think we're still in the infancy of AI in customer service, right? I think it's still very new. I think a lot of people are still thinking about, how it can trust the AI and what will it do. I think there's a lot of ethical considerations as well when it comes to using AI in your day-to-day. But I think for customer service, is not, I don't think AI will replace roles, for example. I think the roles will change, right? Yeah. There'll be more focus on knowledge and bot management, for example, and that will allow your customer service reps to focus on more complex tasks, or just those, answering to queries that really require human touch, for example. Yeah. So I think it's the roles will transform, or the focus will shift, but it's not replacing anything. We talk a lot about the role of AI and human support together, enhancing each other. And then I think it's just thinking about different use cases, and I think this is relevant to anyone, right? So Finn was, directed to self-serve support, so enabling end users to get support on their own. But you could think about it in different use cases. We actually started with the AI in the inbox, so making the support rep experience easier, more delightful, more efficient in the inbox, right? So you can just think about different verticals, different use cases. I think the possibilities are limitless, and I think that's what excites me so much. We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, that, this is still a self-help tool used by customers. If you think back to, I guess even like a few years ago, like if you wanted to just get a quick answer online, like a delivery time or what time's this store open, for instance, you'd go to an FAQ page. And I don't know about you, but to find that answer,
Painful.
it felt really structured. And all you wanted to do is just kind of like, let me just shout a question out there, and I'll just get the response, like a really basic kind of, yep, 9 to 5 this shop's open, rather than having to kind of go through the different levels, because there's so many different questions that a consumer might have. So I feel like it's not something that should be scary. It's just something that's going to help a lot of people a lot more easily. I'm so curious just to see where maybe we'll have this podcast in like a year's time, and like hopefully it's not like the Terminator or anything like that.
Hopefully not. No.
I could not do this podcast episode without making like a Skynet Terminator reference.
Well, let's see. Let's do this in 1 year's time and see what has changed.
Just like the city's burning behind us or
fire. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to you for listening at home. We'll see you next week. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, and follow wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.